Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om and good evening from Niagara Falls. Our Cleveland half marathon is in 10 days, and half of our runners are actually in this class. So today I went on a longer run, so it takes around 80 to 90 minutes. And while I run, I try to practice Panchakosha Viveka. So I try to disidentify with different layers of who I believe I am, the body, the breath, the mind. And when I'm finished running, at say 85 minutes, there's so much enjoyment, there's so much ease at actually experiencing the disidentification of those sheets. Because when I'm done running, the body is so tired that I don't identify with it. The breath has worked so hard I don't identify with it. And the mind that struggled to go step by step by step doesn't have to take more steps. So there's so much ease at all of those levels. And in a very tired way, then I walk back to where I live and I take my shoes off, and immediately the mind comes back and the breath comes back and the body comes back, and all of that enjoyment, all of that ease goes away. And there's a really logical reason for that. Because when I disidentify from these sheets, the body, the breath, the mind, I'm not re-identifying to a deeper part of me, the intellect, Brahman. And if I'm not holding on to the higher, I can keep on letting go of the lower, but if there's nothing to hold on above me, I naturally fall back to where I started. So I'm looking forward for this half marathon to be finished so I don't have to suffer the way that I've been suffering the last few months. But now I want you to visualize being able to identify with infinity, to identify with peace. And if you can hold on to infinity, to peace, then all of those lower identifications, body, breath, mind, intellect, ego, they cannot touch us. It won't be enjoyment, it will be enjoyment. It won't be ease, it will be peace. And our Bhagavad Gita course is the means to make this dream come true. This is a dream for all of us. If you think about today and all of the struggles that came with today, to be free of all of those struggles, to be free of every responsibility, to be free of every role is possible through Srimad Bhagavad Gita, just like Prince Arjuna went from being fallen to being the one who is beyond falling. Coming back to what we've studied from chapters 1 through 5 in our course, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedavyasa shares, Kenapi upayena manaha Krishne niveshayet. I'll say that slower. Kenapi upayena manaha Krishne niveshayet, which means by any means, one must absorb their mind in Krishna, in Bhagavan, in Brahman. Any means. That could be anger, like Shishupal. That could be fear, like Kamsa. Now we know we have to take this mind and absorb this in Bhagavan, but how? This is not a new message for us. We've been hearing this for decades. How? Some of us have been studying in the Foundation Vedanta course, the Advanced Vedanta course, now the Bhagavad Gita course. How? The best way to absorb our mind in Bhagwan is systematic study. Especially in our environment that's so intellectual, systems are important, no? If you're in business school, you study management information systems. There's information, then you systemize that information. And a very beautiful expression of systematic study is sadhana panchaka. And I will connect this to Bhagavad Gita, of course. In Acharya Shankara's parting message to his disciples, he gives 5 verses, and each verse contains 8 sadhanas, so 40 sadhanas, on how to identify with infinity. How many of you have studied Sadhana Panchakam by a show of hands? Okay. The first verse, the summary of the first verse is Shastra. The summary of the first verse is Shastra. The summary of the second verse is Swadhyaya. The third verse is Swanubhuti. The fourth verse is Sadacharaha. And the fifth verse is Samadhi. Now overlapping this onto what we've studied and in English. Okay? The first verse was Shastra or scripture. That's chapter 1 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The Shastra helps us to know that we're broken. The Shastra helps to fix us. Chapter 2 or verse 2 is Swadhyaya. In chapter 2, Bhagavan Krishna asks Prince Arjuna to study himself. This is where the Tvam part of Tattvamasi begins. Swadhyaya, to take up a chapter on who you are. Verse 3 of Sadhana Panchakam, I said, was Swanubhuti, or relative experience. Swa Anubhuti, my limited experience. That's chapter 3 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 3, we begin to flirt with Karma Yoga. We begin to be more selfless, we become more cheerful, but it's just flirting with that. And there's that relative experience that propels us forward. Verse 4 of Sadhana Panchakam, I said, was Sadacharaha, which means one's acharaha, the way one carries themselves, should be aligned with Sat, with nobility. And that's where chapter 4 and 5 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita comes in, where you're no longer flirting with Karma Yoga, you're making Karma Yoga a lifestyle. Less deservership, less doership. And for all of those near computer, what did I say was the summary for the 5th verse of Sadhana Panchakam? Samadhi. And what are we now studying in chapter 6 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita? Dhyana, isn't it? Systematic study makes all the difference between our mind being in the world and our mind being in ourselves. So we begin chapter 6. Pujya Swami Chinmayananda has shared that meditation is not a verb, meditation is a noun. Right from the start, we must know that meditation is not a verb, it is a noun, it is our nature. Our nature is existence, awareness, joy. That's what meditation is. However, we have become weak in our identifications. And so our definition of meditation has become weak also. We've changed this noun into a verb, isn't it? I have to meditate tomorrow morning. Hey man, I just meditated for 2 hours. You know, we treat it like a verb now. And so we're clear. We should use the word contemplate instead of meditate. That way we're aware of what the noun is and what the verb is. Okay, so the verb is to contemplate. That leads you to meditation. And even to contemplate, it's such a refined verb. Swami Chinmaya again has said, contemplation is the highest vocation in life. Nothing we do can be more transformative than contemplation. It's that subtle, that beautiful. But now, what have we done in regards to understanding meditation, contemplation? We focus on all the parts of contemplation that are non-essential. We focus on the space to contemplate. I only use rooms that have vanilla oil where these sticks are releasing that fragrance. I do not contemplate in rooms where there is agarbatti. I only contemplate at 10 a.m. I do not contemplate earlier than that. All the non-essentials we focus on. It's almost like we're procrastinating, no? Procrastination is focusing on everything that's not important, isn't it? That's what we've done with the highest vocation in life. This is called aviveka. Viveka is insight. Viveka is prioritization. Aviveka is being lethargic. Aviveka is not having insight. And for anyone who read the Rad that I posted from Sri Ramakrishna, he said, one is safe to live in this world with Viveka. But if we don't have Viveka, it is unsafe to live in this world. Because in practicing Aviveka, we think the means is the ends. Contemplation is not a dravya. Dravya means material. It's not an agarbatti, it's not a mat, it's not a room. Contemplation is not a kriya. Everyone thinks contemplation is this kriya and that kriya. It's not an action. It's not an asana. It's not a pranayama. Contemplation is not vishrama. Vishrama means relaxation. It lowers my blood pressure. It helps the synapses in my brain. You're still identified with the body. What is the point? It is not this. The way to know contemplation, you have to pick up on sutras and you have to study their elaboration, which comes in the form of bhashyas. And for those who are paying careful attention, Bhagavan Krishna has already introduced contemplation at the end of chapter 5 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. He gives these 2 shlokas, which are like sutras, zip files. And then all of chapter 6 is an elaboration on that. And I want to ask you once again, who gave those sutras? Did Vivek give those sutras? Did I come up with some technique and I branded it and told you not to tell everyone? These sutras have come from Bhagavan. And who gave the commentary on those sutras? Bhagavan also. So what or whom should you study contemplation from? An organization that brands and sells? Or should you study contemplation from Bhagavan? Where will you go if you take contemplation to become a kriya? You'll just be experiencing forms of relaxation. Is that what you're going to forgive enlightenment for that? To contemplate, 3 P's have to be initiated. The first P is called purification. The second P is preparation. The third P is process. Okay? Purification, preparation, and process. And Bhagavan Krishna begins chapter 6 not focusing on the process or preparation from contemplation. He begins on purification. And he brings up that if you're following along with chapters 1 through 5, following along, practicing, then you are a sannyasi. Bhagavan Krishna says you are a sannyasi. And what is the indicator of a sannyasi? The indicator of a sannyasi is nishkamata. Nishkamata means they're relatively desireless. The other way to look at this is they're relatively content. The grass is greenest on their side. And if you have less desires, nishkamata, naturally you will experience samadhana. And samadhana, Bhagavan Krishna calls someone who lives like this as a yogi. Samadhana means having a calm body, quiet mind, still intellect. So you're a sannyasi, you're a yogi. Now tell me, desires, are they internal or external? Internal or external? Where are your desires? Where do they come from? Internal, no? Very good. And then I shared, samadhana is to have a calm body, quiet mind, still intellect. If you're calm, quiet, still, are you rushing outside or are you staying inside? Obviously staying inside. So you see, a sannyasi and a yogi is internal. It is not external. You don't have to change your name or your form to be a sannyasi, to be a yogi. Just because you drink yogi tea, that doesn't make you a yogi. Just because you listen to MC Yogi doesn't make you a yogi. Just because you put Swami before your name doesn't make you a Swami. It's internal. And why this is important to note is because that's the only way you and I can invoke being nishkamata and samadhana. Because if you externalize it, then I can't relate to this, I can't practice this. You're all feeling me? Internal. Naturally, someone who is relatively content, someone who's relatively quiet, that person is going to be contemplative, isn't it? They're going to be more and more inward looking. And that's why I highlighted that this is all purification. So here's a quiz for you. What are the 3 gauges of having a pure mind? 3 gauges of having a pure mind. You can write it if you are so brave. And there's an order to this too. Close. Hemant is relatively close. The first gauge is having a balanced mind. If you have a balanced mind, you can go deeper, which is to have a focused mind. And if you have a focused mind, you can go deeper, and that's having a reflective or contemplative mind. So you see, nishkamata is having a balanced mind. You're all not agitated by desires. I said deeper than that is focused mind, samadhana, correct? And if you have those, you naturally become contemplative. So how do you learn how to contemplate? Through purification. By living what has been taught from chapters 1 through 5. Bhagavan continues and says, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this for you? And so I remind all of you about the 4 types of kripa. What is the English word for kripa? Grace. What does grace mean? Now you're going to write blessing, correct? Grace is when the thought comes to change. For the better, not for the worse. Sleep in. Grace. When the thought comes to change towards Sat, that is grace. Now for all of the people who had the thought to register for the Bhagavad Gita course, isn't that grace? More people had the option, but maybe they didn't have that thought, and you did. Grace. Now the 4 types of grace, from the subtlest to the most practical, at the top is Ishvara Kripa, which is God's grace. That's initiated or expressed by Shastra Kripa. That is the grace of these scriptures. That is expressed or initiated as Acharya Kripa, the grace of one's guide. And now the important point is, how is Acharya Kripa initiated or expressed? Swakripa, exactly. Your own grace on yourself. And this is a perfect introduction into the most famous shloka of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is shloka 5 of chapter 6. You know, people who follow duality or dvaita, they study Bhagavad Gita. Those who follow Vishishta Dvaita or qualified non-duality, they also study Gita. Those who study Advaita, non-qualified non-duality, they also study Gita. People who are action-oriented, people who are devotional, people who are knowledge-oriented, everyone studies Gita. The Germans study Gita, the Chinese study Gita, the Canadians study Gita. The Americans talk about Gita. But Swami Tejomayananda shared that this shloka 5 of chapter 6, is called the Sarva Sangraha. Sarva Sangraha. Sarva means all. Whether you're Chinese or American, whether you're devotional or you're a Vishishta Dvaita, it doesn't matter. Sangraha, everyone meets here, everyone agrees here that this is the most popular and perhaps the most powerful shloka in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. You've heard it, you've shared it, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because in the lesson itself, Swami Tejomayananda so comprehensively shared multiple ways to look at this one shloka. Please read the writings on that. But I'll tell you in summary what he told us when we were studying this shloka. He said you have to promise yourself two things. You have to make a pact with yourself in two ways. The first promise is you will not fall further. So everyone, please feel this. Make this pact with yourself that you will not fall further. Pact number 2, the second part of this promise, is that you will rise from where you are. You will lift yourself from wherever you are. Not that I think I'm this evolved and so I'm going to lift myself from there. I'm not there. I'm here. Saying this differently, on a regular basis, I like to analyze my own sadhana to see if I'm giving enough resources, time, and energy to self-development. And I've written a quote on this document where I do such analysis. And that line is, no sorrow, that's with a K, no sorrow, comma, no joy. That's J, that's capitalized. Okay, no sorrow, no joy, both Ks. The more aware I am of the sorrow in my life, the more fuel that is for me to drive myself towards joy. But if I don't know the sorrow in my life, then I don't move towards joy, isn't it? Swami Tejomayananda shared many times, a happy slave is the worst enemy to freedom. And that's why this promise is 2 parts. Don't fall further. No sorrow. Know the sorrow of overeating. Know the sorrow of being angry. Know the sorrow of being indulgent, materialistic. Know the sorrow of being vicious. And from there, know joy. Know the joy that comes with being disciplined, thoughtful, polite, and on and on and on. I'm going to take us to 6.4 to 6.6 very briefly. Every one of us, I believe, has been exposed to Patanjali Rishi. What is Patanjali Rishi famous for? For Ashtanga Yoga, for the Yoga Sutras. For those people who studied in the Advanced Vedanta course, we took this up quite elaborately. So what are the 8 forms of bringing quietude to the mind? What do you begin with? Yama. Yama is don'ts. Then you have niyama, which is dues. After that, asana, postures. Then pranayama, which is breathing. After that, pratyahara, which is being inward looking. Then comes dharana. Dharana is where we take a thought, a vritti, and we put in a lot of effort in dharana. Dharana means to flow. See, pratyahara means to become inward looking. Dharanas, as you're inward looking, you're taking one thought and you're driving it with a lot of effort towards you. The evolution of dharana is dhyana, where that same thought, but there's not a lot of effort. Here is where Bhagavan Krishna defines dhyana as the thought of aham brahmasmi. Aham brahma asmi. I, infinite, am. I am infinite, I am infinite, I am infinite. And that's with minimal effort because it feels so natural. We had studied that as naturally as you feel that you're a male or a female, so naturally you should feel that you're Brahman. And when the effort goes away, what is the evolution of dhyana? Samadhi. Samadhi. Where that thought is well and fully placed. In other words, you are Brahman, you don't have to share it. This morning when I had gotten up and I was tending to my administrative responsibilities, then all of a sudden I heard Vyasa cry after many hours. And when I heard him cry, and please take this in the right context, I forgot that I had a son. And when he was crying and I went into the room, crying in the sense that he was waking up, I was so happy because I have a son. And I was thinking to myself that even now after 3 months, it's not so natural to me that there's another being living in our house, that I am a parent. But I'm sure with time, that will become more and more and more natural. And I was thinking along another lines too, that I think I was enjoying what I was doing so much this morning that Vyasa was like a bonus. Like, oh, there's a baby there. That's my baby. So you see that level of being joy and peace being natural to us. Right now, when we're joyful, peaceful, we're scared it'll go away. It's not natural yet. Dhyana is the vritti aham brahmasmi. Okay, dhyana. Now that's called contemplation. That's contemplation. Now, who's a contemplator? That person is called a dhyata. So dhyana is contemplation. The one who contemplates, the contemplator, is called dhyata. So who is the contemplator? Is it the breath? Is it your car? Who's the contemplator? It is the ego. It is the jiva. That's who is the contemplator. It is not the body. It is not the breath. Generally, we say the mind, but that's not true either. It's not the intellect. It is the jiva. And I'll tell you some awesome symbolism from our Vedanta and Ramayana course. We just studied a Chaupai where Bhagavan Rama is described as walking in front. And who's walking in the back? Sri Lakshmana. And who's walking in the middle? Mother Sita. So the symbolism of all of this is that Bhagavan Rama is Brahman. Sri Lakshmana is the Jiva. And Mother Sita is Maya. So now whenever we hear the word Maya, especially Vedanta students, right? It's so challenging and scary. Mother Sita is Maya. She's following Brahman. And the Jiva is following Maya. But remember, who's that Maya following? Brahman. No problems. As long as Maya is following Brahman, that's called Vidya Maya. You know what that Vidya Maya is? The Guru Shishya Parampara, the Shastra, this Bhagavad Gita course. That's all Vidya Maya. It's leading us to Brahman, I hope. But if that Maya is not looking at Brahman, what if that Maya starts looking at a Mriga? What about that golden deer? You see what happens then? That Maya was not at Brahman. That Maya was at Samsara. And the Jiva, that is Sri Lakshmana, he followed, no? Then what happened? So remember, the Dhyata is the Jiva. And now finally, the Dhyeya is what is being contemplated on. Okay? So contemplator, contemplating. I don't know what the next part of this English structure would be, but what you're contemplating on is called I. Have you ever thought about what I is? From the time we're aware of ourselves, we're thinking, I think, we start to speak, I speak, we start to act, I act. What is that I? That's the Dhyeya. When we start to contemplate, we're contemplating what that I is. If you think about this deeply, this I or aham is even more pure than Om. Om is supposed to take you to Brahman, correct? But if there's no I, there's no Om, correct? You don't have to contemplate on Om. You can contemplate on I. And if you contemplate, you'll realize that I'm not the Jiva, I am Brahman. So to finish 6.1 to 6.6, what Bhagavan Krishna is teaching all of us is the Jiva identifying with Brahman. If we're pure, if we've followed the preparation, the process, that is dhyana, that is this chapter, is the Jiva identifying with Brahman. And you know who says this so romantically and beautifully? Here's a quote for you. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. That's Jalaluddin Rumi. We think that's romance or poetry, but that's Jiva identifying with Brahman. Oh. Nara.